World War II spawned thicker tanks and harder armor, so nations built tank destroyers to kill them. Today, we will discuss tank destroyers used in World War II by 6 major nations. Let's start with Germany. Sturmgeschütz III, or Stu-G-3, used the Panzer III chassis with a fixed superstructure. It first carried a short gun, then a long 75mm cannon. It became Germany's most produced armored vehicle and a dependable tank destroyer used almost everywhere. Jagdpanzer IV sat low on a Panzer IV hull with thick frontal armor and a long 75mm gun. It excelled in defensive battles, especially when crews set it up in prepared, hidden firing positions along likely enemy routes. Jagdpanzer 38T, better known as Hetzer, was a small Czech-based tank destroyer with sharply sloped armor and a compact 75mm gun. It was cheap to build, hard to spot, and feared for surprise shots fired from cover. Marder II was a quick stopgap design with an open fighting compartment on a light chassis carrying captured Soviet guns or German Pak-40s. It was thinly protected, but could punch through many early and mid-war Allied tanks from range. Nashorn, once called Hornice, mounted the famous 88mm gun on a tall, open-topped hull. It had very little armor, but at long range it worked like a sniper, knocking out heavy enemy tanks before they could answer. Jagdpanther joined the Panther's mobility and sloped armor with an 88mm gun in a casemate. It gave Germany a fast, hard-hitting tank destroyer that many veterans and historians still admire for its mix of protection and firepower. Jagdtiger pushed the concept to the extreme, carrying a huge 128mm gun and very thick frontal armor. Its great weight strained the drivetrain and suspension. So many broke down before battle, but anything in front of it was in danger. German ambush hunters forced a response. America answered with fast, turreted tank destroyers. M10. Wolverine took a Sherman-style hull and added a thinly armored open turret with a 3-inch gun. It became the most common American tank destroyer in Europe and Italy, serving with both U.S. and Allied forces in many campaigns. M18. Hellcat was the hot rod of the tank destroyer force, very light and very fast. Its 76mm gun, combined with high speed, allowed crews to carry out hit and run ambushes and then quickly relocate before return fire arrived. M36. Jackson, often called Slugger, put a powerful 90mm gun on an M10-based hull. It finally gave American crews a weapon that could reliably defeat Panthers and Tigers from fighting distances instead of only from the flank. M3 gun motor carriage was a half-track with a 75mm gun bolted on top in an open mount. It was an early war improvisation that provided mobile anti-tank fire in North Africa until better turreted tank destroyers arrived. M6 gun motor carriage went even cheaper, placing a 37mm gun in the bed of a 3/4-ton truck. It was useful against light armor early on, but it became obsolete once enemy tanks gained thicker armor and heavier guns. M12. Gun motor carriage mounted a 155mm gun on a tank chassis. It served mainly as long-range artillery and a bunker buster, but in some battles it fired in direct line at strong points and heavy vehicles with impressive effect. T-28 Super Heavy Tank, often labeled T-95 gun motor carriage, was a huge and slow assault vehicle with very thick armor and a 105mm gun. It was intended for attacking fortresses rather than open field tank duels and never saw combat. Where American doctrine prized speed and turrets, the Red Army trusted heavy casemate guns. Su-76 was a light, open-topped vehicle with a 76mm gun. It was cheap to manufacture and widely used to support infantry, knock out pillboxes, and handle lighter German armor wherever Soviet troops advanced or held the line. Su-85 put an 85mm gun on a T-34 chassis. It filled the gap until T-34-85 tanks appeared, giving Soviet units a better chance against Panthers and late Panzer IVs during the hard fighting of 1943 and 1944. Su-100 was a refined casemate destroyer with a long 100mm gun and sloped armor. Its high-velocity shells made it one of the most respected Soviet tank killers of the late war, especially during advances toward Central Europe. Su-122 carried a 122mm howitzer on the same T-34 base. It was intended for blasting bunkers and strong points, but its large explosive shells could also damage or disable enemy tanks through shock and spalling, even without clean penetrations. Su-152 mounted a 152mm gun on a KV hull and earned the nickname Beast Killer. Its heavy shells could smash Tigers, Panthers, and fortifications with equal enthusiasm, making it a feared presence wherever it appeared. ISU-122 shifted to the newer IS heavy chassis, keeping a long 122mm gun. It combined thick armor, decent mobility for its size, and strong anti-tank performance from long range, serving in both offensive and defensive roles. ISU-152 took the same heavy chassis and installed a massive 152mm howitzer. It acted as a breakthrough hammer in major offensives and a terrifying, if sometimes inaccurate, tank destroyer when crews faced German heavy armor. If you enjoy this armored history, subscribe and share with a friend who loves tanks too. Next on our list is Britain, wrapped precise anti-tank guns in specialized self-propelled hulls. 17-pounder. Self-propelled Achilles combined the American M10 hull with the British 17-pounder gun. It gave Commonwealth forces a mobile tank destroyer that could finally defeat Panthers and Tigers at sensible combat ranges on Western fronts. Archer put a 17-pounder on a Valentine chassis facing backward. This created a low ambush vehicle that could fire, then drive away in what looked like reverse, letting crews slip out before counterfire arrived. Deacon mounted a 6-pounder gun on an armored AEC Matador truck. It was a desert improvisation that provided British columns in North Africa with mobile anti-tank support before better tracked designs and more refined vehicles became available. A 30 Challenger was a stretched Cromwell cruiser tank modified to carry the 17-pounder in a tall turret. Fielded in small numbers, it gave fast units extra long-range anti-tank punch while keeping up with other cruiser tanks. A 34 Avenger followed late in the war as a low-profile turreted vehicle with a 17-pounder. It was designed purely as a self-propelled anti-tank gun and served mainly in Northwest Europe during the closing stages of the conflict. A 39 Tortoise represented the extreme end of British thinking, a super-heavy assault vehicle with thick armor and a powerful 94mm gun. It was meant for attacking fortifications and dense defensive lines, and it remained a late-war test bed. The 3-inch self-propelled 16 CWT was an early stopgap design. It reused anti-aircraft guns on mobile mounts to give British units some long-range anti-tank reach before specialized platforms like Achilles and Archer were ready in numbers. Moving on, Japan needed fresh tank destroyers for the Pacific and Asian battlefields. Type 1. WWII mounted a 75mm gun on an open-topped Type 97 Chiha chassis. It served in places like the Philippines as both mobile artillery and a simple tank destroyer against advancing Allied forces. Type 1. WWII replaced the gun with a 105mm howitzer aimed at indirect fire. It still used a tank chassis, so it could follow infantry closely and deliver heavier support during ground operations. Type 3. WWII enclosed the fighting compartment around a 75mm gun. It offered better crew protection and became Japan's most complete attempt at a purpose-built tank destroyer, though numbers remained limited. Type 4. WWII carried a 150mm howitzer on a Type 97 chassis. It mainly served as an artillery piece, yet sometimes fired in direct line of sight at bunkers, landing zones, and other hard targets during late war battles. Type 4 WWII. To plant a high-velocity 105mm anti-tank gun on a tracked chassis. Only very small numbers were built near the end of the war, and its combat use was minimal due to material shortages and collapsing production. Type 5. NATU was an open-topped design carrying a long 75mm gun. It was a late effort to give Japanese troops a modern anti-tank platform, though only a handful were completed before Japan's surrender. Type 2. WWII used the Chiha chassis with a short 75mm gun in a turret. It acted as a support tank that blurred the line between gun tank and tank destroyer, providing direct fire for infantry more than dedicated anti-tank work. From improvised trucks to heavy monsters, these tank destroyers shaped every theater. Which one stands out to you today? Tell us in the comments below.